Natalya, it's so great for you to be here, and thank you so much for that amazing panel that you just did. Can you, in a couple sentences, tell us, what did you want to tell us today? What was the point of your presentation?
I think at this moment it's important to understand that though Ukraine is not on the front pages, the things are really grave there, especially in some of the regions, and the human tragedy is definitely happening in the east of Ukraine, and it can't be neglected. That of course the situation is not perfect. We are fighting a war, and of course the main task for the Ukrainian media is still to be critical, because if you don't question the things, if you don't question the government, of course you can't sort out the mistakes. Therefore, we're living in a very complicated situation with incredible Russian propaganda, which is not our task to confront, but still it's influenced people a lot, and it's close to kind of call of arms, and started to influence the people in Russia who would think about, like hating the Ukrainians, which is probably something different, that so many millions of dollars were like put into the like networks like Russia Today to do that. It doesn't mean that there isn't, you can like praise Ukraine for everything is happening, but what I believe that the pluralism is there, the criticism is there, and of course all the governments have troubles, all the societies have troubles, and when from outside, people when they talk to Ukraine say like, oh, do you have a conflict between President and Prime Minister? So do you have a conflict between the parties? I think it's okay.
Normal, right?
That's actually, I love to be in a country when you have the political competition between the parties and the things. And I also think that there are most of the talks about Ukraine are about the geopolitics, that DC and Moscow, Brussels in Moscow, wherever you do that. And I do believe that it's kind of a failed argument, because in the end there are people who are suffering, they're often neglected, and they actually, this is a really, when you really, being like in Canada or like being in European Union, like journalists ask really like, oh, isn't West really too like pushing Ukraine to the West? And so like, actually what we felt there, that there is no that much support. It's okay, nobody really moaning, I mean maybe somebody, but for us it's rather than to do the homework, and of course have the support, because what's happening now, the whole international law and order fall into the pieces because of the borders where, the idea of the borders and security of Europe were neglected. So I think it's, if the news are still not on the front pages of the foreign media, it doesn't mean that on the daily basis there are people in Donbass who are suffering, and you also should put the things in the content, why it happens, who is to influence, and there is a distinction between the people on the ground and the armed groups and the society in Kiev and the government in Kiev and the government in Moscow, and it's all different groups, and you just can't put that, take the side and tell and leave it to the to the frozen conflict, because unless you sort it out, the people would suffer.
So you're saying there's not just one Ukraine, there's many different Ukraines that all have to be represented in news stories?
I meant that it's not that it is about the country of diversity, but really to see the country when there are the debates. And if something going wrong, it's up to us to sort it out and to discuss, because it's a normal political situation which we actually struggle and fought for.
Right.
Not to have a perfect life, but to have a life when you can debate and make things done after sorting it out and finding the best answer.
Right, a life where people are criticizing the press, right? That's what you're looking for? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the people criticizing the press, people criticizing the government, but that's something. When I always report on the foreign countries, I always think I have a doubt about the country where people don't criticize their government. And good for enough, we're doing a lot of jobs, and I think it's most for the Ukrainians to do their home task.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Natalya.